Welcome to the Plant Trainers Podcast, where we're helping people improve their quality of life through nutrition and fitness. And now, your hosts, nutrition and wellness coaches, international speakers, Adam and Shoshana Chaim.
Hey, I'm Adam Chaim.
And I'm Shoshana Chaim, and we are
Propelled by Plants. Today we bring to you episode 325, RunSpirited Towards Plant-Based with Henry Howard.
In this episode of the Plant Trainers Podcast, we talk with Henry Howard, and it is a little bit of a different show. Henry is not fully plant-based, and he has been researching for a long time the benefits of a plant-based diet and has been slowly making his way over time. And when he reached out to us a while ago to talk about plant-based and running on his blog, we developed a little bit of a relationship with him. And what we really wanted to do on this show was talk to him a little bit about the challenges that have been keeping him from going 100% plant-based, despite knowing the research and all of that, because we know that there are a lot of you who are still not 100% plant-based, or you who know people who are on their journey and who can really use some practical ideas on how to overcome some of those challenges that we don't necessarily always talk about on other episodes.
Henry's an interesting guy. He started running seriously in 2011, and he had a marathon on his bucket list, and after 18 months, he actually accomplished that goal of finishing his first marathon, and since then, he's gone on to complete 20 more. He qualified to run the Boston Marathon, which he did last year, and he has since finished 8 ultramarathons as well. He's on a serious journey to get into the Western States and is now about to tackle his biggest challenge yet, which is a 100-miler coming up in November. So while he's not fully plant-based, and we're not going to hold that against him in any way, he has been working through his nutritional needs as a pescatarian and working with a family on celiac disease. He's got a lot coming for you, great tips, great information. As a certified running coach who trains his athletes to meet their goals, he shares how he's able to get to his. So make sure to share this episode out with everyone who's interested in running, anyone who knows anyone who may have celiac disease, or anyone who wants to become more plant-based, because it's a really great episode. Finding the right toque to keep your head warm with comfort and spreading the plant-based message isn't such a simple task. That's why we decided to put together a fantastic toque made from 100% organic cotton that does the job. Grab one of our plant power toques and enjoy comfort while supporting and spreading the message of eating more plants. Check it out at planttrainers.com/shop to get yours now. And now for a moment of gratitude.
Last night, the children helped me make some chickpea omelets for dinner. It was fun to go through the different ingredients with them, to have them mix and stir and all those other good things. And the best part was that they ate it all. So that was good.
They ate it all up. It was delicious.
No leftovers.
No leftovers, which is unfortunate for the next day. I'm grateful for the fact that our son is playing a gigantic instrument. He's playing the baritone, which is similar to a tuba, if you could picture that. And he started off by being able to make one sound that sounds like it's coming out of your you-know-what. But it's been a lot of fun because he's super interested in it, and it's awesome to watch him get better at it.
It's awesome to watch him be excited about it.
Yeah, I'm super grateful for him to be excited.
At it,
He'll
but
get
he's
better.
Excited.
He's pretty excited.
Henry Howard, thank you so much for joining us on the Plant Trainers Podcast today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No problem. We've known you for a little bit of time, and it's going to be an interesting show today. So we're really excited to get into that. Before we do you have a moment of gratitude to share with us and our listeners?
Of course. As I was thinking about this question, I came up with a lot of options, but I think I'm really grateful today for the running community that I'm a part of. It's such a great group of people, especially on social media, that are inspiring and motivating, and we kind of help cheer each other on. And I think that is a great thing. Social media has its pros and cons, but having a group that is out there and so positive and helping other runners, whether it's someone who's a newbie or someone who's more experienced, definitely is a reason to go to social media these days.
I think community is everything. And I was actually invited to speak a couple of weeks ago in Vegas in front of 2,500 people. And part of what I talked about was community, and finding your community really helps you to be able to thrive in what you're doing and bring other people along. When you feel isolated, you really do feel held back sometimes.
Absolutely.
So you've been running a while, and I want you to share your story a little bit. But before you do, because you're talking social media, there is a lot of great support in that community, but there are times where you'll come across a post that is kind of on the negative spectrum and pushing you in a different direction. And I'm wondering if you could share how you respond to those types of comments, or do you just ignore them completely?
I think it depends on the comment itself. If it's someone, and I think you can usually tell this, if it's just a troll out there just to be a troll, I generally let those go, because it's like banging your head against the wall. It's not going to really do anything. If it's someone who may be misunderstood or something like that, and there could be a learning outcome from it, then I would try to engage that person in a dialogue and see if there was some misunderstanding or something that wasn't clear. And try to approach it that way, and just try to keep the focus on the issue rather than the name calling, which obviously gives social media a bad name.
Yeah, and you've been running for a while now, doing some marathons, qualified for Boston, as we talked about in the intro. And I'm just wondering how your body's feeling through all this training, because you're doing some long distances, and we know you're training now for something pretty special. So let's just get started with how your body's reacting to the type of training that you're going through right now.
So I started running in 2011, and my goal at that point was to run a marathon, and it was a bucket list item. And I figured that, I better start soon if I'm ever going to be able to do this. So I started out, ran my first full marathon about 18 months after I started, and ahead of time, which was good for a first marathon, but I thought I could do better. And so I eventually hooked on with a coach. At about the same time as I was starting to run these long races, my sons were diagnosed with celiac disease, and that helped all of us in our family change our diets pretty much overnight. And I know we're going to get to the plant-based part of that later. But I think that was definitely a huge step in my journey, being able to have a medical reason to merge from a typical Western or American diet to something that is more healthful and helped in my recovery. It used to be after I would do a marathon, I would have to crawl up the stairs and that kind of thing. And it would take me a couple days to be able to feel normal again. Just 10 days ago, I think it was, from today, I did a 50K, beat my time at the same course from 3 years earlier, and finished second in my age group, 30th overall out of about 250 people. And the day after, I was up and doing yard work and that kind of thing. So I think not only has my training has made me stronger, but being able to recover better through a almost entirely plant-based diet has certainly helped in being able to do these long races and recover fully.
Do you think it has anything to do with the type of training that you're doing? And do you feel that as you get older, because you're continuing to train a certain way, your body gets used to it, so it needs less time to recover because it could just repeat and repeat and repeat? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's a good point. One of the first things I learned from my first coach, who I started with in 2014, previous to her, I used to do like a spring and a fall marathon. And I would take off, a couple months or 2 months at a time in between. And she said, just keep going, even if it's your mileage is down and that kind of thing. you won't have to build back up again. So I have been able to, keep going throughout the year. And, this year I've done these longer races. I'm training for a very long race in about 6 weeks. And actually this morning when I did my run, I passed 1,500 miles for the year. And usually I usually finish the calendar year at between 1,200 and 1,400. So this will definitely be the most mileage I've done. And I don't have any physical issues that are a toll from all that running.
So what are the major differences in your diet from 2011, 2014 till now? You mentioned being pescatarian, but let's break that down a little bit more.
So in 2011, my younger son was at 0% of the growth curve. And so by that point, his older brother had shown some growth, but not a ton. And so we took the younger one to a specialist. She took one look at him and said, I'm going to test him for celiac disease. And his score was off the charts. His brother's was also very high. So since they were diagnosed with celiac, we basically changed overnight to a gluten-free diet for all of us. My younger son was destined to be about 5'2", and in changing his diet, he began to grow very quickly. I'm 5'7", and we look each other right square in the eye now. He might even be a little bit taller than I am, and that wasn't even in the cards 7 years ago.
How old is he now?
He will turn 19 in November. So, and the most interesting thing beyond the height growth is that his hair actually thickened once we got all the gluten out. For my diet, I changed as well at that point, and I had always had kind of the typical American Western diet. During the summers, we would have cookouts with burgers, maybe have a steak once in a while. Chicken was a staple because it was, quote unquote, healthy. And then as my running journey progressed and I, watched Forks Over Knives and I, learned more about a plant-based diet, I made gradual strides toward that. And each time I took a step, I was able to, notice changes in my recovery and these kind of things that indicated that there was something to this. So I think it was at the beginning of 2018 that I went cold turkey, no more chicken, no more red meat. At that time, I wasn't eating a lot of red meat, but there was some. So basically narrowed it down to fish, eggs, and some milk products, I think was all that I did. And then at the beginning of this year in 2019, I took another step and went from eggs to egg whites for omelets and substituted in almond milk for milk for the most part. I still do have fish a couple times a week. And when my wife bakes, she uses eggs and milk more so for the boys because and that's what she's used to baking with. So those are kind of the few remaining areas that keep me from being 100%.
And so we want to applaud you for the journey that you've made. And we know that you've seen the research, read the research, that, on your blog, you're promoting the plant-based diet as you did when you had Adam and I answer some questions and write an article about that. So what we wanted to talk about a little bit was, are you ready to start to make more changes? Because I think there are a lot of listeners who really want to be 100% plant-based, but aren't there yet, or are celebrating all the changes that they've made and kind of think that they're okay now, but are starting to see some other health issues come up, or their recovery isn't as good. But there are so many blockers keeping people back from community, like we talked about, when you're in your family community and not everybody else is there, or not knowing how to replace, maybe the protein or the omegas or other macro or micronutrients that might come about. So let's talk a little bit about, Are there any other dairy products other than the milk? I know that you've replaced the milk with the almond milk, but other than what your wife is doing for you on your own, are there any other dairy products coming in?
If there are products that are made with milk, then those, I guess, would qualify under that. I'd have to look to see,
But no yogurt or cheese or anything like that?
No, I've done away with cheese. We do get pizza once in a while, and there's a couple of good places we know of that have like the cauliflower crust and also have vegan cheese as an option. I do have yogurt rarely, and this is one of the challenges that I have because for my job, I travel quite a bit. And so, I was just in Alabama a couple weeks ago, and I told our host, just as long as you take me anywhere where I can get a salad, I'm good. And so that worked out well. But staying overnight
in Alabama, that's good.
Yeah, it was interesting, but
it's a little less progressive.
Yeah, but at hotels with the breakfast that they have, it's challenging. Where I can get egg white omelet, which I know there's that obviously, and I would just have vegetables with that, and for places that don't offer that, it's basically the cereals, the fruit, granola, which is very often has gluten in it, and yogurt. So after a workout, I look at that, I'm like, well, I would like some protein, and I'm not going to do their eggs. I'm not going to do their granola. I'll have fruit, but that's after a workout, that's not enough calories for me. So I'm needing something else. So that's on rare occasions, I will go to the yogurt for that.
Okay. So let's look at that for a minute.
Okay.
There are hotels where you could order a la carte, of course, and there are hotels where they just have your regular continental breakfast, which I assume would be a little bit more difficult. So having just traveled, I know that Whole Foods was definitely on the radar. So sometimes as soon as you get off that airplane and checking in and running over to Whole Foods and picking up maybe a block of tofu, picking up some hummus, picking up a couple of items that can help supplement you throughout, it can be really helpful. They even have like beans in smaller cans or that look like the applesauces where you can open that up and rinse that out and stick that on salad, stick that on breakfast. But if you are able to order a la carte, here's how you could kind of make up your breakfast. If they have tofu, maybe not in Alabama, but if they have tofu on the menu, you can ask for that, but you can bring in your own. And then using those stir-fried vegetables or those sauteed vegetables and going more for the hash browns and kind of making a little meal out of that can be really great. You're going to be getting protein, whether you can get some beans or whether you can get some hummus in there or bring in some of your own tofu after a run. And, we talk about how tofu is overrated, but when you are an endurance athlete, you do need more than somebody who's not. So keeping that in mind, but definitely sticking with potatoes, sauteed vegetables, some extra spinach, some extra salad for breakfast can really be nice and filling. I know that being in Las Vegas, I was told there's no vegan food anywhere. There's no vegan food anywhere. And what I realized is that I need to do a better job at educating people on how to order off the side menu, because I was able to get rye bread, a beautiful bowl of berries, and some hash brown potatoes. And that was my breakfast, and it filled me, and it was great.
And that's with my being a celiac, that's also something where I'm a big fan of Hiltons. And so they allow you to request something when you make your reservation. They don't always fulfill it, but you can at least ask. And I always ask for a gluten-free bread option, whether that's a bagel or a piece of bread or whatever. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I also sometimes bring my own, and then I'm able to slap some nut butter on top of that as another option as well too. But I like the Whole Foods idea. I often have my lunch or dinners there, so taking that extra step for a breakfast supplement is a great idea.
Yeah, and for those listeners who are saying, oh, but my schedule is too hectic. The second I'm off the plane, I'm straight into meetings. I mean, that's where it's great that Amazon, and we're not getting paid for this, but that Amazon and Whole Foods does have that connection now, because you could literally order your food online and have it delivered to your hotel for you. So if you don't have the time, or if it's not in a close enough vicinity for you to walk or what have you, you could legit have some really good food waiting for you when you get there. Maybe more of the non-perishables, but for sure it can just be waiting for you.
There's so much more great information coming your way, but before we get to that, we wanted to share with you and let you know that if you want a healthy, natural way to fuel your workouts or fire up your brain, Energy Bits are for you. Energy Bits are tiny spirulina algae tabs that are nutritionally dense, a source of mental and physical energy that is all natural and causes no stomach distress. They eliminate fatigue and hunger instantly with no caffeine, sugar, chemicals, gluten, or soy, just pure plant-based nutrition. 1 ingredient, 1 calorie, and 0 net carbs. I use them before workouts or sometimes just as a snack. They make me feel great and give me that extra energy boost I'm sometimes looking for. I also use Recovery Bits, which are tiny chlorella tabs. I use them after workouts or when I'm feeling hungry late at night. Visit energybits.com and order Energy Bits, Recovery Bits, Vitality Bits, or Skinny Bits, and use the promo code PLANTTRAINERS to get 20% off your order at checkout. The link will also be in the show notes just in case you didn't get that all down. Improve your energy, wellness, and waistline all at the same time with Energy Bits. Check out Energy Bits today and feel the difference. Your brain and body will say thank you.
And now back to the show.
And I don't know if they have Fresh Time in Canada, but that's a grocery store we have here, and it's not quite up to Whole Foods, but it's fairly similar, where I think for people who may have a Fresh Time as an option instead of Whole Foods, that would also be definitely something where you could get that kind of food that you're talking about.
Yeah, or Trader Joe's or anything in the area. But I really do think that if you just go online and use like your Prime account, there's plenty of foods that you can just get straight from there.
Eating well while traveling is definitely challenging. I'm wondering if you could share some of the foods that you do consume that you think contribute to your success at running, whether it's food that directly impacts your recovery or food that directly influences the energy that you have before you go out for a run.
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely, for enhancing recovery and getting that protein, I use Plant Fusion, which is a pea-based protein supplement. They have different varieties. So even today, after this morning's run, I had a shaker bottle ready, water and 1 scoop. I forget how many grams of protein, but it was something where I was able to get that protein, only 120 calories, and it's non-GMO, non-dairy, non-everything basically. So I use that throughout the week. Before my long runs, a cup of coffee before a long run in the morning, on weekends. And depending on how long the run is, that will also be a time where I might get a piece of bread or bagel and nut butter and have some of that before I go out as well too. And that's generally enough carbs that I can digest those easily enough and not have any issues either during or after the run.
What's your thought on the carb loading situation? There's a lot of people for carb loading, a lot of people against it. Where do you find yourself in that thought?
Well, when I started running, that was, really popular. It was the big spaghetti feed the night before. And I did have gluten-free pasta the night before, but it always made me feel just full and blasé and didn't have that great of an experience. So I would, and when people, I'm a running coach as well too, and when people ask me about, that same essential question, I'll tell them, find out what works for you. Don't deviate. Like if you rarely have pasta and you've got a big race tomorrow, well, don't have a big plate of pasta tonight. What you ate during your training, is what you should have, before your big race. So if, for me, it's often potatoes and vegetables and that kind of thing that I trained with, that I know my body, works well with. And so for, that night before a race, it's definitely good to have carbs in, but not a big plate full of pasta or spaghetti, but being able to use the carbs that you've used throughout your training, ideally potatoes, vegetables, those kind of things, but also being able to watch your fiber as well too, so you're not having any pre-race issues.
So I want to talk a little bit about qualifying for Boston for a second, because that's a very challenging task for the average person to accomplish. And I know there's many, many people that are qualifying these days, and the time is based on your age group that you fall into. The older you get, the more time you have to qualify. So my head is thinking, I haven't qualified yet. My fastest marathon is a 3:35, and I'd have to get down to a 3:20 right now. And that's a big chunk. But if I continue to run, I'll get older. And if I get older, that time will expand. But at the same time, I'm going to get a little bit faster over time. So
how many people have the same plan as you?
Well, I'm sure I don't know. I'm just thinking when I'm like in my late 50s or 60, if I'm still running, then I should have no problem qualifying. So what's your thought on the whole qualifying for Boston situation, and how are people so fast? Is it genetic, or is it training, or is it a combination?
When I started my journey to Boston, my marathon PR was 3:53. And that's when I started up with my coach in 2014. And she taught me a lot about what I wasn't doing that I needed to do, that I've picked up in my own coaching, because before I was a runner, I wanted to run. So I ran, and I didn't think about, cross training or understand how to implement proper cross training. Yoga was a completely foreign concept to me. And so she was able to incorporate those into my plan. And I pecked away at that 3:53. I needed to get, at the time it was 3:30, I believe. Yeah, 3:30. And I never got down to 3:30, or no, 3:20. I went the wrong way. Yeah, I never got down to 3:20. But I was able to, as you mentioned, the age groups are 5-year increments. So every time you hit one of those 0 or 5 birthdays, you get a little present from the Boston Marathon Association. And so when my goal, or my Boston qualifying time, was 3:30, I was able to run a 3:24, give or take a little bit. So I beat it by roughly 6 minutes. And that year, the cutoff was 4 minutes and something. So I was able to make it in for the following year. It's definitely a process. And, I think you're right in saying that as you get older, it gets easier in a way because you get those bonus minutes. But it also means that you have to kind of keep at it. And that's where the dedication comes through. And that's where the ones who at this time are receiving their email confirmations that they got in, generally I think those are the ones who have kept at it, who have had that long range view of, I really want to do this, and I need to cut back from whatever my marathon PR now is to this. And after running it this past April, it is so worthwhile. It was a fantastic experience, and I'm glad I was able to do it and hope to get back again.
It's pretty awesome. Congratulations. So, but is it genetic or training or a combination of both? Do you think anybody could qualify if they wanted to?
I think anybody can qualify with the right attitude, with the right coaching, and with a dedication. When it's rainy and crappy outside and you've got a run to do, you've got to go do it, because you never know on race day what's going to happen. One of my athletes who I'm really proud of, I coached her to her first full marathon this past March. And when I was coaching her, I didn't let on, but I knew based on her times, I knew that she had the potential to qualify during her first marathon. And so we talked about strategy and, where I wanted her to go out and attack the race. And that morning, it was the race was in Indianapolis where we work, and I happened to be doing a 15K that morning, also in Indianapolis. And it was raining and miserable, and it was toward the end of March. And I was like hoping that she'd have a good day and would, not only finish, but, definitely had a shot at Boston qualifying. And my race got done, and I didn't hear from her. And I was driving home and just got this simple text with her time on it. And I had to pull over and text her back and say, congratulations. I said, you qualified for Boston. That's just so awesome. And that really meant a lot to me that she did that.
I think that's wonderful. And I'm getting goosebumps and little tears as we go. But before, as you guys were saying, is it the wiring and the mindset, or is it the training and keeping going? I think that the way that you take care of your body, not just the showing up for the runs, and not just making sure that you do it through sleet and snow and high waters and all of that, but we see people as they get old, their bodies are breaking down. They're getting sicker. They're getting heavier. You can't outrun a good diet. And even a lot of people who are slim or don't have, or aren't as big as the next person, if they're not eating properly and they don't look so sick on the outside, it doesn't necessarily mean that their body's not breaking down on the inside, which is what we saw with Adam at 36 with heart disease. So if we have people who are still eating the North American diet, still feasting on pizza and beer every Sunday with football and all of that, we see the bodies begin to break down, which means that as they get to that older age where they might be able to qualify or may have been able to in their younger age, they have cellular breakdown. They are becoming depressed, have more anxiety, have heart disease, have lung issues, have apnea where they're not as well rested. And all of these things contribute to not being able to qualify for Boston. And when they are eating a plant-based diet, they will be more likely. I mean, we see it over and over again, people performing better in their 40s than they were in their 20s because their diets have changed, which I think is huge, is really, really huge.
I agree. I should also mention, too, that athlete I was talking about, I don't know if she considers herself vegan or vegetarian, but her diet is at least as plant-based as mine is. I know she's also gluten-free. She's 40, and, in her 20s, she did some triathlons and half marathons and that kind of thing. Not a lot, but she was active. And then she became a mom in her 30s, and she wanted to get back into it. And I really think that long layoff from dedicated training, she was able to go from getting back to half marathons and then qualifying for Boston in such a short time frame definitely is reflective on her diet choices. She's just been able to recover quickly and has been able to do amazing things.
Yeah,
Plant heavy.
The food has a direct impact on your performance. There's no question, and your ability to push yourself further and further every time you want to. And you're going to be going pretty far soon with a 100-miler. And the longest I've run is a 50-miler. And when I was preparing for that, I was like, this is a little crazy. And then when I did the race, not so bad, but I saw these other guys and girls that were doing 100-milers. And I'm like, that's next for me, but that's insanity. So how do you wrap your mind around doing that kind of a distance and having to prepare for it every day in and day out?
It is total insanity. Boston, well, at first my goal was to finish a marathon, and then next big goal was qualify and run Boston. And, then I started looking at what else is beyond there. And as I was qualifying for Boston, I also started my first couple of ultras, 50Ks and then 50-milers, and I did my first 100K. This year, about 3 or 4 weeks after Boston. And, as an ultra runner, I'm just captivated by Western states. And because of the qualifying standards and the lottery that you need to actually get in there, on average, it takes 6 or 7 years of qualifying every year to be able to get in. And I thought, well, that's a pretty audacious goal. And so if I want to do that, I need to start qualifying like today. And this race that I'm doing, you get a qualifying ticket as long as you finish. And what's good about that is also the timing, because I believe it's the very last weekend that they allow entrance into the lottery for Western states of 2020. So as long as I finish, I'll have one ticket and we'll see what happens. But that's something where, 100 miles is definitely something that is going to be a test both mentally and physically. And I've, been able to, knock off all these other things from my bucket list. And so this is, the next one out there that I have a good team that I'm very excited that they're going to be helping me on this journey, literally as a pacer and crew. And so, that gets back to the running community and how I have a friend who is going to be there with me, and he's going to be pacing the end, and he got one of his friends to help. That makes it a lot easier knowing that I will have that support as I go all day and all night.
So as you do that, we want to make sure that you have less lactic acid buildup. We want to make sure that, that you have more oxygen flowing through. We want to make sure that you have better recovery. So why don't you give us one more challenge that you're having to overcome to get a little bit more animal products out of the diet, and we'll help you with that.
I think the big challenge is getting, I understand the protein, and I use chia seeds and other ways, garbanzo beans, other kinds of beans, that kind of thing to get in the protein. But I also know that I just need calories to be able to replenish what I'm losing. Another interesting tidbit in my background is that in 2018, I was supposed to do that 100K that I did this year. Well, 4 days before, I had emergency abdominal surgery. And what happened was my intestine, I had scar tissue from a previous surgery wrap around my intestine, create a chokehold, ended up having to be hospitalized 4 days before that 100K. And so I'm very cognizant of not only the calories, but the amount of food I'm eating. And since all these vegetables and everything are very, low in calories, I do look for ways to get in more calories within my diet. And that's kind of where I'm kind of stuck on fish, where, you're
getting a bang for your buck in terms of calories.
Yeah. So, because I obviously don't want a reoccurrence of that. So I know I can't eat just, huge platefuls of low calorie vegetables and fruits throughout the day, because then I'm going to have a recurrence of the abdominal issue.
And that makes sense completely. And a lot of people say, I just don't have time to be feeding my face all day long. I got to work in there too. And I don't want to be too heavy before I run and all of that. So, smoothies are definitely something that help you pack a huge nutritional and caloric punch if you're making them properly. Soaked nuts, soaked seeds, avocado, just the amount of vegetables that you're getting, but because you're taking it in the liquid form, it doesn't have that heavy set feeling. But also those avocados throughout the day, or using cashews or other nuts to make dressings to go on those salads. And that really does up your calories that you're having there. You have something to add?
Yeah, no, the nuts, I think the nut butters, which you're already using, but adding in more nuts throughout the day will definitely give you those calories. It has some protein in it too, if you're concerned about protein. I love avocado personally, and I'll scoop it out, cut it in half.
We were supposed to have sushi for dinner last night, and I opened the fridge and there was an avocado missing. Because I had to eat it. It's a good source of healthy fat, protein, and it's good calories as well. So there are definitely ways around using animal products, and you just need to really know what to go after to give yourself that opportunity to fill yourself up with healthy, nutritious food that's nutrient dense. I think that's the key, to find foods that are nutrient dense and not always calorie rich,
But because of the amount of running you're doing, you don't want to be running under a calorie deficit. So you do have to be consciously aware of what you're putting in your body.
And also those little bit of animal products that are still left are adding inflammation into the body. They're utilizing your energy system. So your body is not available to break down all of those plants because it's working overtime with that little bit of egg, dairy, and fish that is still going in. So sometimes there's a bit of a waiting period, but in the long run, your body adapts. But when it's usually when we're mixing the two that people end up having more problems, right? Mm-hmm. I hope you find that helpful, and I hope the listeners find that helpful too.
I also like the pun of "in the long run" that you use there.
Right. In the long run. That's right. Yeah.
So we're going to be watching for you at the beginning of November and cheering you on when you do your 100-miler. If people that are listening want to connect with you, want to reach out to you, want to find out how your race is going, where can they go to check out more information about what you're doing and how you're helping people share their story? Because we know you're doing that too.
Sure. Well, the great part about having an unusual name is that I was able to claim all the Henry Howards on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I also have a website where I featured your guys' story. It's RunSpirited.com, just like it sounds, RunSpirited.com. And I also have a RunSpirited Facebook page, a Twitter account, and the Instagram, actually, there's an underscore between Run and Spirited, but you should be able to find that as well, too. And I share stories about running. I share product reviews that I do, and definitely nutrition is also part of that conversation as well, too. So, people can certainly reach out to me, whether they would like to, talk about kind of what we talked about today, if they'd like some, to talk about their running journeys, or if they're looking for a coach. I have openings now, and I'd be happy to have a free consultation and see if there's a good fit there for both of us.
That's wonderful. And we will link to all of those things that you said at planttrainers.com in the show notes for this episode. So everybody can find those there, but I'm sure it's quite memorable. So they'll be able to remember all of that. We'd like to thank you so much for your time, so much for your honesty, so much for your determination to hit your goals and how that will inspire other people today. And we look forward to working with you again in the future.
That sounds great. I appreciate your time and a great conversation. And I jotted down some of these ideas, and we'll move forward with them.
Sounds great.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the Plant Trainers Podcast. We want to make sure that you subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platform.
We really appreciate the feedback we receive from you. Every time we get a 5-star rating or review on iTunes from one of our fans, it really helps other people find us, just like you did.
Thanks so much to our patrons. To become a patron, visit us at patreon.com/planttrainers. Even supporting us with $1 really makes a difference in the quality of the show.
And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram and Twitter. Our handle is @PlantTrainers. Like Plant Trainers on Facebook, join our newsletter, and check out our website at planttrainers.com for awesome recipes, a list of our services, and of course, our latest podcast.
We encourage you to email your questions to info@planttrainers.com so that we can help you improve your quality of life through nutrition and fitness.
So we hope we've inspired you today. Join us again next time and have a healthy day. Or is that too corny?
It's a little cheesy.